Hello there, I'm Harry Benjamin. Welcome to MMTV. Now we thought, seeing as it's been a bit of a mental week for motorsport news, we'd go through and run down all the things you need to know. And let's start with Formula One. Number one, there is going to be a reduction of the cost cap levels incrementally over the next few years. Now basically in English, that means the amount teams can spend on a car during their season will be reduced, capped and basically limited to $145 million starting from 2021. Now for years, especially the top teams, they've been able to spend in excess of around $200 million per season. So what this is doing is it's reducing the amount people can spend. So 145 million for next year, and then in 2022 it's being reduced to 140 million before 2023, all the way through to 2025 it will be capped at 135 million dollars. And what this does is it ensures the sustainability of Formula One, allowing it to be affordable for all the teams up and down the grid, especially the smaller non-manufacturer teams who will be struggling as an economic crisis looms. Number two is the development of an Aero Handicap. Now basically, the more time a team can spend on developing the aerodynamics of their car, the better that car is going to be. Now what's interesting here is the introduction of this handicap is going to be based on where a team finishes in the championship standings. So basically, if Red Bull, or more likely Mercedes, but I don't have a mini Mercedes car, so Red Bull will have to do, if they finish first in the championship, the next year they won't be allowed to spend as much time developing the aero of their car as the last place finishers. For instance, Williams, displayed with my 2012 Bruno Senna model. If Williams finished last in the championship, they will be allowed to spend more time developing the aerodynamics of their car. Theoretically, what this does is it evens up the playing field yet again, and hopefully makes for some more exciting racing. There are some other updates as well, but for the interest of time, the final big change, number three, is the introduction of a new token system for 2021. Now, normally, any modifications or changes to cars have a limit. For example, how many gearboxes a driver can use in a single season. Now, because of the corona situation, F1 has said that when we do get back racing, teams can only make a limited number of modifications to their 2020 cars to be used for the following 2021 season, which means basically we're most likely not going to see too many drastic changes to the way the cars look and the teams perform between the end of 2020 and at least in the early stages of the 2021 season. In other F1 news, changes slide, with F1 teams putting all their staff on furlough. British team McLaren looks to be suffering hard, with the group announcing plans to cut 1,200 jobs from its various businesses, including the Formula One team. However, with the budget cap coming in, it is hoped the impact will be lessened on the F1 sector, but it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? With the budget cap means teams not being able to afford to have as many staff working on their Formula One operation, with teams such as McLaren, Red Bull and Ferrari as well, all saying they will hope to find other jobs and redeploy members of their F1 operation to other racing series they are involved in, or indeed yet to be involved in. Ferrari to IndyCar, anybody? Finally, F1 calendar news though, with Motorsport UK announcing the sport will restart from the 4th of July. A potential Formula One provisional calendar has also emerged, which will see out the year and complete at least some racing and make up the 2020 season. Sadly, the return of the Dutch Grand Prix will be delayed to 2021, which is the latest fatality from the original calendar. It looks as though we will have an 8-race European schedule beginning on July the 5th, with 2 rounds in Austria, followed by Hungary, 2 races in the UK, and then on to Spain, Belgium and Italy. Germany's Hockenheim is also set to be on standby as well. However, Silverstone, which has been said to want to host the 2 British races, will be fighting the UK government if it cannot get around the 2-week quarantine rules set out for people coming into the country. In terms of beyond Europe, constant negotiations are happening, with a potential season finale being held as a double header in Bahrain and Abu Dhabi in December. Vietnam is also in there as well. Overall, it's all pretty up in the air, but we will at least get some racing before the year is out. A few other bits and rumours swirling the F1 virtual paddock at the moment include Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff supposedly leaving the team to join forces with Lance Stroll at Aston Martin. I should stressed, none of this is confirmed, but many insiders are saying this could be a sign of Mercedes wanting to exit Formula One, lessened with many joining the Aston Martin mark perhaps to rise to a championship challenge. All speculation as well, and more of it including around this man, Valtteri Bottas, and his options going forward. If Mercedes release him, could his current talks with Red Bull and Renault prove fruitful? Well, despite these rumours, it is highly expected Mercedes will want to hang on to Bottas for at least another year. In other news, Williams has announced it has terminated its title sponsor, Rocket, and has also put the team up for sale for the first time ever in an effort to ensure its long-term future. The Williams team has experienced a tough few seasons, recording a further financial loss at the end of 2019. Meanwhile, the Renault Group has announced it is to cut up to 15,000 jobs, but has yet to highlight where exactly these losses will come, alongside showing its commitment to staying in Formula One. And finally, as I got my ASOS order today, Kimi Raikkonen got a slightly bigger order from Ferrari, who shipped him the Ferrari car he won probably his last F1 race with, the US Grand Prix in 2018. That is the car he won that race with. Talk about next day delivery, right? Okay, swapping engines for batteries as we head over to the Formula E world, and my lord, it has all kicked off this week. Formula E, like many other racing series, has been running a virtual form of the championship called Race at Home, and it's seen pretty much all of the FE drivers taking part in races virtually, representing their teams and raising money for UNICEF, with an alternative series running alongside it, featuring pro sim racers, celebs, personalities, but they are in a separate championship. But since the last virtual e-race, it has all kicked off, and it started with this man right here, Germany's Audi driver Daniel Abt, who achieved a podium place during the Berlin virtual race, which seemed to raise eyebrows as he had not been performing that well in the initial rounds of the championship. It turns out that he asked one of the pro sim racers to race for him, but it didn't go unnoticed, with fans noting Abt's Twitch stream of the race had the camera placed perfectly to avoid anyone seeing his face, and then again him not being able to be interviewed after the race either. Several drivers, including Jean-Eric Vergne and Stoffel van Dorn, raised their concerns over this. Then it was discovered Abt had asked for a young sim racer to race in his place, and he was immediately disqualified and fined €10,000 by Formula E to pay to a charity of his choice. Audi Sport then announced Abt had been suspended, then terminated his contract with immediate effect because of his actions. Abt has said he never meant to mislead, and his actions were only meant for entertainment purposes, to create a film for YouTube, and it does seem like an incredibly harsh reason to sack someone. But rumours swirling around that Audi were looking to cut ties with the German anyway, and this provided the perfect basis for that. They have said since that Audi stand by our culture of tolerating mistakes. However, the incidents that took place during the Race at Home Challenge sim racing series were not a mistake, but a conscious decision to go against the rules. Now, the new Extreme E Championship, the baby of former Formula E CEO Alejandro Agag, is ramping up plans for its launch in 2021. The series will race all-electric SUVs across 5 remote territories to raise awareness around climate issues. Each X-Prix will involve several sprint races with an equal mix of male and female racers, and it will be shown live across the BBC over in the UK. Races will take place over 2 laps lasting around 16 kilometres, where 4 teams comprising 1 male and 1 female driver will compete head-to-head. One of the features of Extreme E will be a 2-day elimination race format, with qualifying taking place on day 1 to determine the top 4 drivers, who will progress into a semi-final, with the top 3 making the final. The bottom 4 from quali go into a crazy race, with the fastest team going through to make up the 4 finalists. Also, there is a feature called Hyperdrive, allowing an additional boost of speed to a team who performs the longest jump on the first jump of each race. Yes, it has jumps. Races are going to be held in exotic locations as well, just like this, across the world, such as the Arctic and the Amazon, where scientists associated with the sport will also investigate the effects on each country. What is totally different as well about this championship is that the series will house all the teams, scientists and equipment on the RMS St. Helena ship, which will sail to each location that the Extreme E Championship visits. The season is set to begin on the 23rd of January 2021 in Senegal. Now, let's head over and visit a few other racing series as well, and we'll do a quick rundown of all the latest news across the motorsport world. Big news from the World Endurance Championship now, which alongside Le Mans organiser ACO and Motorsport Games are going to be hosting the biggest esport event so far, holding a full virtual 24 hours of Le Mans race across the 13th and 14th of June when the original real race should have been held. There are some big names joining the lineup too. Jenson Button will be there, as well as current F1 stars Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Pierre Gasly, Giovinazzi and Charles Leclerc. Two-time Indy 500 champ Simon Pagenaud will also be there alongside Formula E champion Jean-Eric Vergne. Fernando Alonso and Rubens Barrichello are big names that have just been announced as well to join the lineup, and it will all be streamed live online from 2 o'clock British summertime. Across the pond, and IndyCar has announced a provisional schedule to see out 2020. Richmond Raceway has been pushed back to next year. Toronto has also been cancelled. IndyCar will open with races at the Texas Motor Speedway, which will take place without any fans. We then go to the first of 2 races at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. Road America in the first of 3 double headers planned with Iowa Speedway following, and Laguna Seca then hosting 2 rounds in September, with Mid-Ohio, the Indy 500 and Gateway all scheduled for August. St. Petersburg is set to round out the calendar on the 25th of October. Sticking with American racing, Nascar was the first championship to get back on track this year, despite lots of questioning as to whether NASCAR should have gone ahead with its first race of the Cup Series at Darlington last week. It seemed to have gone off without too much issue. All personnel were temperature screened on arrival and given a medical form to fill out, and the race was held with no fans in the stands. NASCAR leading the way to what could perhaps be a new normal for racing. One final update from the Americas comes from the IMSA Sports Car Championship, which has also announced plans to resume racing. IMSA has only run 1 round so far. Its opening round, the Daytona 24 Hours at the end of January. It will restart with 2 behind closed door races at Daytona and Sebring in July, using the same protocols as NASCAR. The change up in schedule has seen the Watkins Glen 6 hours pushed back to October. After Sebring in July, Road America and Virginia International Raceway are lined up, followed by Laguna Seca and Mid-Ohio. Then we get Watkins Glen, the Petit Le Mans 10-hour race at Road Atlanta, Lime Rock, before finishing up with the Sebring 12 hours. Back over to Europe now, and we head to the struggling German touring car championship, the DTM. Having already lost Mercedes as a major manufacturer in 2019, their replacement are motorsport racing cars. Aston Martin branded cars only lasted a year before pulling out of the championship, and a further blow was then dealt by Audi, who announced plans to pull out of DTM at the end of this year, leaving BMW as the single manufacturer left in the series, with their contract with DTM rumoured to be up for renewal at the end of the year. So what does this mean for the DTM? Well, in order to survive, they need more cars and more manufacturers on their grid. At the moment, ITR, who run the championship with former F1 driver Gerhard Berger at the helm, have not announced anything other than they are working on something. And David Coulthard confirmed to us on the MotorMouth podcast that he spoke with Gerhard Berger, and it seems that the DTM is still not ready to announce a roadmap to a new future just yet. Heading over to the DTM's British cousin now, the BTCC, which is further ahead with their plans on a new calendar for 2020, kicking off in August with first 3 rounds at Donington Park, Brands Hatch and Alton Park. Currently, MSV Chief Exec Jonathan Palmer has said that it looks unlikely that the opening rounds will be able to race with full crowds, if any at all. The uncertainty of the coronavirus situation leaving many aspects up in the air. Okay, we're nearly there, don't worry. Let's jet over to the British Touring Cars' Australian rival, the V8 Supercars Championship, which will resume with a 2-day event at Sydney Motorsport Park on the 27th and 28th of June. Most of the calendar's tracks have been postponed since the Australian Grand Prix was cancelled, of course. It is expected there will be an 11-round calendar with strict limits on crew numbers and TV-only events. Teams will only be allowed 13 people as well, including drivers, and there will be no support categories, and all races will be held during daylight hours. And finally, the World Rally Championship has so far only completed 3 of the original 13 rounds this year. Several events are now expected to be cancelled for a revised schedule expected to result in a largely Europe-based championship. Rally Portugal was cancelled in April, with the Safari Rally in Kenya being postponed to 2021. In the last week, it has also come to light that rounds in New Zealand and Japan are likely to be cut from the 2020 schedule. The finish round of the WRC is also expected to be delayed. And that's your lot for motorsport news. A lot to process from the last week, but the good news is that some racing, at least, is expected to be back within the next month. I'll be back in another week with another update. I'll see you then. In the meantime, make sure you download the MotorMouth app, subscribe to the MotorMouth podcast, and stay up to date with all the latest happenings with the motorsport world by subscribing to our YouTube channel. And I'll see you next time.